A group of friends met at Clara's house for a night filled with movies, snacks, and spooky stories. With her parents away for the weekend, the unsupervised sleepover brought an added sense of excitement and freedom. What started as a carefree evening of laughter and fun would soon spiral into a night of chilling terror they would never forget. By 9 p.m., they were sprawled across the living room floor. Bowls of popcorn and candy surrounded them as a horror movie played. One of them, eager to appear brave, claimed the movie wasn't scary. The others teased back, their laughter masking the nervous energy building in the room. "I've heard scarier stories in real life," someone said, grinning. "Oh yeah, prove it," another challenged. The storyteller began to recount the tale of the mirror game, an urban legend about a ritual to summon spirits. You need a mirror, a candle, and complete darkness. The game's supposed to reveal your future, but if you're not careful, something else might come through. "That's ridiculous," one friend scoffed. "It's just another dumb story." "Let's try it," another said, eyes gleaming. "It'll be fun." Clara hesitated. "I don't know, guys. My mom always said not to mess with things like that." "Oh, come on," someone teased. "It's just a game." After some convincing, Clara reluctantly agreed. They retrieved a mirror from the bathroom and placed it on the coffee table. A single candle was lit, and the lights were turned off, leaving the room in a dim, flickering glow. "So what do we do?" someone asked softly. The rules were explained. Each person would sit in front of the mirror while the others closed their eyes. They had to stare into their reflection and say, "Show me my future." If nothing happened, the next person would go. But if you see something, the storyteller warned, don't look away until it's over. "Why not?" someone asked. "Because that's how you let them in," the storyteller said ominously. They laughed nervously, dismissing the warning. The boldest friend went first, sitting cross-legged in front of the mirror. The others closed their eyes as the phrase was repeated. "Show me my future." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the bold friend gasped. "Oh my God," they whispered. "I see something." "What is it?" someone asked, peeking. "It's me, but older," the bold friend said, their voice trembling. "I'm in a forest, but there's something behind me." They screamed and turned away. The candle flickered violently and the room grew colder. Clara quickly turned on the lights. The bold friend was pale and shaking. "What did you see?" someone asked, their skepticism fading. The bold friend shook their head. "It wasn't me. It had my face, but its eyes weren't human." The group fell silent. Another friend, determined to prove their bravery, took the next turn. They repeated the phrase and stared into the mirror. For a long time, nothing happened. Then their expression changed. "I see something," they said. "It's a shadow. It's moving closer." Suddenly, their body jerked backward as if pushed. The candle went out, plunging the room into darkness. Clara scrambled to turn the lights back on. The friend was sprawled on the floor, gasping for air. "What happened?" someone whispered. "It touched me," the friend stammered. "Something came out of the mirror." Panic set in. One friend wanted to stop the game, but another insisted they had to finish it or risk leaving the ritual incomplete. Reluctantly, the quietest friend took their turn. They sat in front of the mirror, trembling, and repeated the phrase. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the reflection began to move independently, smiling in a way that didn't match their expression. "That's not me," the quiet friend whispered, tears streaming down their face. The reflection leaned closer to the glass, its smile widening unnaturally. Clara screamed and threw a blanket over the mirror. The quiet friend collapsed to the floor, sobbing. The room felt heavy, as if an unseen presence lingered. "We have to get rid of the mirror," Clara said. "How?" someone asked. "Break it," another suggested. "No," the quiet friend said. "Breaking it might trap whatever that is here. We need to get it out of the house." They carried the mirror to the backyard, placing it face down. Someone poured salt around it, recalling something about warding off spirits. Then they covered it with a sheet and left it outside. The rest of the night passed in tense silence. No one wanted to sleep, afraid of what might happen if they closed their eyes. When morning came, they went outside to check the mirror. It was gone. "Who moved it?" Clara demanded, but everyone swore they hadn't touched it. The group parted ways, each haunted by what had happened. Weeks later, they learned that a neighbor had found a shattered mirror in their yard, its pieces scattered as if something had burst through. None of them spoke of the mirror game again, but each was left with a lingering sense that they hadn't just played a game, they had invited something into their lives, something that might never truly leave. It all started when my girlfriend, Alicia, my best friend, Rodney, his girlfriend, Amanda, and I decided to go camping at a spot my dad had suggested. He mentioned a secluded lake surrounded by thick forest, calling it the perfect escape. The trail leading there was easy enough to follow, and we arrived as the sun was setting, painting the horizon with vivid orange and gold. The lake gleamed in the fading light, its surface calm and still, while the soft breeze played through the trees around us. It felt like a place untouched by the world's noise and chaos. We quickly pitched our tents as the last rays of sunlight vanished into the night. Though darkness had settled over the woods, the lake still reflected a faint orange glow. Amanda, full of energy on the warm evening, proposed we all jump in the water. While Rodney and I were unsure, Alicia and Amanda were eager. Laughing, they stripped to their underwear and stepped into the lake, marveling at how unexpectedly warm the water was. I stayed behind to start the campfire, hoping to get it going before joining them. Yet, no matter what I tried, the wood wouldn't catch. Annoyed, I handed the task over to Rodney and stepped aside to watch him work. Suddenly, a scream tore through the air. Alicia was thrashing violently in the lake, her arms flailing as though fighting something invisible. Amanda froze in place, staring at her in shock. Then, Alicia vanished under the water. "She's drowning," Amanda shouted. Without thinking, I ripped off my shirt and ran into the lake. My heart pounded as I reached the spot where she had vanished, only to find the water barely reached my waist. I grabbed her arms and hauled her up. She gasped for air and bolted toward the shore, her breaths frantic and uneven. Halfway back to the campsite, she turned around and screamed, "Get out of the water." Amanda and I exchanged confused glances but didn't wait to figure out why. As I moved through the water, something wrapped tightly around my ankle, a firm, unyielding grip. A sharp, stinging pain shot through me, as if claws were tearing into my flesh. Fear overtook me, and I kicked frantically until I broke loose. Panting, I staggered back to the campsite. Alicia was already perched on a cooler, pressing a towel to her ankle, where a small but deep wound was oozing blood. I looked down at my own leg and saw a fresh gash on my ankle, blood streaming from the cut. Retrieving my first aid kit from the tent, I hurriedly bandaged us both. As we sat together, trying to steady our breathing, we struggled to make sense of what had just happened. "I think it might have been an eel," I said, though my voice lacked confidence. Rodney frowned. "Do eels even live in lakes like this?" Alicia shook her head, her voice low and shaky. "It didn't feel like a fish. It felt like a claw." Her words sent a chill down my spine. She was right, something about the way it had grabbed me didn't feel natural. But what could it have been? We convinced ourselves we were safe on land. Whatever it was in the water. With the campfire finally burning, we settled in, trying to focus on anything but the lake. The night deepened, and the woods became eerily silent, save for the occasional crackle of the fire. We passed around a few beers, talking about life and sharing stories, occasionally circling back to the incident. Then came the first splash. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to make us all turn toward the lake. Peering into the darkness, we told ourselves it was probably just a fish. But minutes later, another splash broke the silence, this one deeper, heavier. It didn't sound like a fish jumping. It sounded like something moving through the water. The girls urged Rodney and me to check it out. Armed with flashlights, we walked to the edge of the lake, scanning its surface. Everything seemed calm at first, the beam of light cutting through the darkness. Then Rodney froze. "Do you see that?" he whispered, his voice trembling. I followed his flashlight beam to a strange shape protruding from the water. At first, I thought it was an object, but then I realized it resembled a head, something with glinting eyes staring back at us. It wasn't human, and it definitely wasn't any animal I'd ever seen. The head moved, rising slightly higher out of the water, sending ripples across the surface. Rodney and I screamed, "Run!" We bolted back to the girls, shouting for them to grab their belongings. In a frantic rush, we packed what we could, valuables, phones, and bags, leaving the tents and larger items behind. Together, we sprinted down the trail toward the parking lot, hearts pounding, not stopping until we were safely in the car. The next morning, I went back with my dad to collect what we'd left behind. The campsite was a disaster. The tents were shredded, coolers lay scattered across the ground, and deep claw marks scarred nearly every surface. The air felt heavy, almost alive, as if something unseen was still watching us. When I pointed out the gash on my ankle and described the creature to my dad, he simply shook his head, his face unusually pale. "I have no idea what that could have been," he murmured. We didn't stay long. Whatever lurked in that lake was something that wasn't meant to be disturbed. None of us ever returned. When I was a kid, before we moved to Texas, we lived in Georgia in a house with an incredible backyard that made me feel like the most popular kid around. Our place became the go-to spot for sports and outdoor games. The yard stretched across 2 acres, bordered by woods on 3 sides with trees scattered throughout, giving it a secluded, almost magical feel. In one corner, we had a trampoline and a hot tub nearby, plus a huge detached 3-car garage. There was even an above-ground pool, which felt like the ultimate luxury for our middle-class neighborhood. The open space was perfect for soccer, baseball, football, basically any sport we could think of. And when we weren't playing sports, we'd dive into games like hide and seek or manhunt, making the most of every inch of that backyard paradise. One Friday evening, when we were about 11 or 12, my friends and I decided to have a camp-out sleepover in my backyard. It was Mike, Michael, and Jason, and we had to get permission from our parents, of course. Since it was a Friday night, none of our parents had any reason to say no, especially since my family had plenty of camping gear, including 2 tents big enough to fit 2 people in each. After getting approval, we planned to have them arrive around 5 so we could play sports before dark. We kicked things off with soccer 2-on-2 for about half an hour, followed by baseball for another 30 minutes. After taking a break to catch our breath, my parents ordered pizza for us, and we ate around 6:30 or 7. By this time, the sun was beginning to set. We knew it was the perfect time to set up the tents before it got too dark. I was good at setting up tents because I was a Boy Scout, so I took charge, and my friends helped. By the time we finished, it was getting pretty dark, but the backyard lights were on, casting a nice glow over the area. Now it was time to play manhunt, our favorite game. There were countless places to hide in the yard. Mike and I hid first, and Michael and Jason were the hunters. The objective was simple: make it back to the home base, which was the back door of the house, without getting caught. The rules were no camping near the door. The trampoline was far away, near the woods, so I crawled under it to hide. When the hunters started, they blew a whistle to signal the beginning, and I waited under the trampoline, watching them search for us. Eventually, I decided to make a run for it, targeting the hot tub next to the house. From there, I'd have a clear line to the back door. As I crouched behind the hot tub, I heard something strange, the sound of one of the trash bins tipping over on the side of the house. Then, I noticed the motion detecting light on the side of the house flick on. I peeked around the corner and saw a tall person, dressed in dark clothes, walking briskly away toward the woods. Before they entered the woods, I realized it wasn't my dad. I ran to my friends and immediately called off the game. We told my dad about what I had seen. After checking around the woods and scanning the street for anything unusual, my dad assured us everything was fine, but suggested we sleep inside that night. It was disappointing, but we agreed. We ended up playing games on my PlayStation inside for the rest of the evening. As I recounted what I had seen, a tall figure walking into the woods, near the trash bins, my friends and I briefly considered going back outside to sleep in the tents since they were already set up, but we decided to stay inside for the night. Later, after finishing our game, we quietly snuck back outside. We didn't want to wake my dad, though we weren't exactly hiding the fact that we were returning to the backyard. Mike and I shared one tent, while Michael and Jason took the other. After a few jokes and shouts back and forth between the tents, we started to quiet down, trying to sleep. I hadn't fallen asleep yet when I heard footsteps nearby walking through the grass. Suddenly, the tent zipper was pulled open, and I looked up to see a figure peering inside. At first, I thought it was my dad, but as I focused on the face, I realized it wasn't. It was a stranger, a man who appeared to be around my dad's age. He was standing at the entrance of the tent, looking as though he was about to come inside. Panic shot through me, and I screamed at the top of my lungs, which set off Mike. We both screamed in terror. The man grabbed our ankles, trying to silence us, but then seemed to realize he was about to be caught, and quickly left the tent. We bolted inside the house, and my dad, already hearing our screams, rushed out to investigate. I told him what happened and where I had last seen the man. My dad ran through the yard, yelling at the guy to come back if he had the guts. We could hear him from inside the house. My mom called the police, and when the officer arrived, he took down my account and made a report. After that, nothing really came of it. We didn't know if the man had returned or if he ever got into trouble. But looking back, it was a terrifying experience, one that could have turned out much worse.